RunDNA has an incredible range of running and walking footwear, apparel and accessories, catering for anyone who is looking for the right shoe and fit. They're trusted by podiatrists and physiotherapists right across Adelaide. The RunDNA fitter's advice is second to none. So if it's time for new walkers or runners, you can find RunDNA, 20 Manton Street, Hindmarsh, or the other location, 391 Fullarton Road at Fullarton. Both stores open 7 days a week, plenty of off-street parking. You can find them online as well, rundna.com.au. If you run or walk, then you need to run DNA.
It's the 19th of June. This is Hooked on Sport, and welcome to Ben Hook.
Hey, Wallace, g'day. And you look a little bit excited, mate. Your team's in town. The Swans playing against Port Adelaide on Saturday afternoon. So you'd be a little bit buoyed by it, I would have thought.
Well, a little bit excited, Hooky, because two things have happened. One is that there's a pre-match function, which are always good fun. And in the olden days, pre-COVID, we used to be able to get on the ground and lift the banner up and have the boys run through, which is great. But now all it is you can stand on the side and clap them as they sort of walk in. So looking forward to maybe that happening, but heading off with some Port supporters. So that'll be a lot of fun. Port are coming off 2 wins, and the Swans are hopeful of getting 2 stars back.
Go on. Who are they?
Joel Amarty's likely to come back, but also the most important thing is we've got Goulden and Papley likely to make an appearance.
Goulden will certainly be massive for the midfield, and Papley's capacity to find a goal or two most matches is critical. I was thinking about this match, Wallace. At the start of the year, this would have been earmarked as one of the biggest games of the season. So a losing grand finalist versus taking on a losing preliminary finalist. And it does just go to show that, I guess, adjusting or waiting a bit of time before you actually determine where these games are scheduled. This is probably going to be a Thursday or a Friday night game. It's not buried away. I don't mind the Saturday twilight slot, but this game seems to have lost a bit of sheen from where we were probably at when we were looking at the draw in February, March.
Yes, it's been a very underwhelming season so far for a Swan supporter, but, who knows? I think if you're a fair weather Port supporter, probably now a good time to get out and watch them.
Yeah, 100%. And I think they're a big chance again on Saturday afternoon. And, it's interesting, isn't it? Success or victories paper over a lot of cracks, but there is just no talk at all about Ken Hinkley going early anymore. They've won their last 2. They were very good against Melbourne, and all of a sudden that's not the topic of discussion. So might be something that we might bring up a little bit later on in the chat, mate.
This week, one of the big issues was about the latest on LIV Golf and the North Adelaide Golf Course. What do you got on that?
The Premier, Peter Malinauskas, came out and announced that basically they're taking all of responsibility for that precinct away from the Adelaide City Council. It makes perfect sense to me. It's exactly what happened with Adelaide Oval, and you know full well that if the Adelaide City Council got their fingerprints on it, there were going to be delays and issues and challenges. All of the elected members aren't necessarily going to align thinking of it, and that's exactly what the case is. And so I think that's a very, very smart move by the state government to take it out of council hands. But then a couple of things that have cropped up, Wallace, that I think are really interesting. So I reckon you and I have chatted, and I've certainly made the point elsewhere, that this is a very, very smart play by the state government to bring LIV into the city. I think that's where we like to see most of our sport. I think we would like to see it at a public venue that the punters can have access to. I think all of that makes a lot of sense. And I think it is absolutely a smart thing to do, to be able to say, righto, we are going to take this fairly underwhelming parkland public golf course at North Adelaide and turn it into something pretty special. So tick, tick, tick. Very, very supportive of all of that. Can I just make a couple of points that I thought was fascinating? The Premier did the rounds on, what is it today? It's Thursday. It's Tuesday morning. He did the rounds of the media, or was it yesterday morning? Might have been yesterday morning, to be honest, Wallace. I only listened to him on 5AA. He said some stuff that made perfect sense to me. There was some other stuff that I think is absolute fantasy land, and he's getting some poor advice from people. First of all, he's trying to claim that this is going to be one of the world's greatest public access courses. Now, Pebble Beach is a public access course. St Andrews, the old course, is a public access course. So you are setting the bar ridiculously high if you expect that North Adelaide, with the investment that you're putting in, which is not a bad investment, but the idea that this is going to be one of the world's greatest public access courses, when you consider what that has to be measured against, that is just absolute fantasy land. Point number two I would make, and I'm really, really concerned about this, is the Premier was very keen to make the point that access to the course will be largely unchanged from what people currently pay to go and play this course. So it's $40 to go around the South Course on a weekday. I imagine that the Premier had in mind, he said it'll go up a bit, but it won't go up significantly more. So let's say it goes up 50%, which is a big jump. But let's say $60 green fee to go and play the North Adelaide South Course, or the new championship course, if you like, if you're a local. But he's also said that this is going to be reliant on interstate and overseas visitors coming to play, who he says we will charge $500 to come and play around at this course. Now, that's not an unusual model in the abstract to say, righto, locals get one rate and visitors pay another rate. I can understand that might be the case. But if it was 10 or 15%, I think that's reasonable. To suggest that you are going to put a 1,000% tariff on any interstate or overseas person who comes in and plays this course is totally outrageous and will absolutely scare people away rather than attract the people that you are hoping will come and play it and the people that will come and make it economically viable. Point number three, Wallace, is that we are still determined to have this course overseen by Greg Norman as an architect. I've got a couple of points to make about Greg, and I've been pretty strong about this, and I probably need to tone myself down a bit. Greg Norman is a reasonable to good golf course architect. I don't think he's ideal for this particular site. I don't think it's anything that he specialises in. He tends to specialise in resort courses in Asian countries where you've got a lot of relatively flat expanse. I don't think he's had great success with parklands courses, certainly in comparison to a number of other golf course architects around the place. I would make the point about this. The most significant golf course overhaul we have had on a tier one course in South Australia in the last 20 years is Greg Norman redoing the East Course at the Grange Golf Club. That golf course, with an enormous investment, enormous overhaul, some incredible changes in the layout, went from the 5th ranked tier one course in South Australia to the 5th ranked tier one course in South Australia. It barely moved the needle whatsoever in its ranking across Australia and didn't move its ranking at all across Adelaide. And that was an enormous investment. I am terrified that Greg Norman is going to develop something that will be wonderful for LIV, the LIV guy, that even the Premier himself says is only there for 1 week of the year, and then we've got to find out people who are going to play it for the other 51 weeks. If we come up with something that's great for professional golf and terrible for the average 15 to 20 handicap player, well, that is the most ridiculous decision we could ever make, in particular when we're trying to charge interstaters $500 to play it. There are so many things that need ironing out with this. The Premier, he has his heart in the right spot, and as I've said right from the start, this overall as a concept is very, very good, but he's getting terrible advice from a lot of people who know nothing about how to set up good golf course infrastructure and design that will make it a destination, because we are miles from that at the moment. Right here in Adelaide, our very own Neil Crafter specialises in this sort of stuff. And how it was on everyone that Neil Crafter, South Aussie Neil, a local, a guy who does these sorts of courses routinely as part of Crafter Mogford, he would have been absolutely perfect to oversee this sort of design, and I imagine would have come with a lot smaller price tag than Greg Norman will. And I am absolutely adamant that we would have come up with at least as good, almost certainly a far, far better result that would have been absolutely a destination course for people to come and play for years to come. We're miles from that.
Now, on to fair or farce. Mitch Georgiadis has a bigger future than Riley Thilthorpe.
Mitch Georgiadis has a bigger future than Riley Thilthorpe. It's a good question, because Georgiadis kicked 7 on the weekend against Melbourne and looked like a real dominant forward. Oh, gee, I'm going to say farce, because I reckon they've just both got enormous futures. Port was really smart to hang on to this kid. He was a massive trade option to head out to Western Australia, where he's from, at the time that they had Charlie Dixon as their dominant top forward and Georgiadis was sort of on the periphery. But they held on to him when he had a lot of trade value. And now he looks like he's going to be set up as the absolute gun key position full forward for the Port Adelaide Football Club. You know what I kind of hope, Wallace? I hope in about 5 showdowns' time that we go back to the old days of, Lockett at one end, Dunstall at the other, 2 full forwards kicking 7 or 8 goals between them. Wouldn't that be amazing to see that as a showdown? We've never really seen that. I mean, Modra, by the time Port Adelaide were in the competition, Modra was a bit in and out of the team at the Crows. So, and, Treadray, wonderful forward for Port Adelaide, but at the same time played a little bit further up the ground. Scott Cummings was there early, but to see a couple of big banging full forwards like we had in the 80s and 90s, and one's Georgiades and the other is Thilthorpe, I think that would be spectacular. So the answer, farce, but gee, it's a close run thing.
This time next year, Port Adelaide will be ruining the day it moved Ken Hinkley on. Fair or farce?
Oh, it's a really good question as well, Wallace. I think this is farce. I think by this time next year, we will have moved on and we will have forgotten, I guess, the way all of this has played out. And I do expect with Port Adelaide's list that they will continue to be a pretty solid competitive team over the next 3 or 4 years. And I find it hard to believe that they'll go back so far that the Port Adelaide fans will be missing Ken Hinkley. But at the same time, I do think that there will be a sense of we gave up something far more significant than we realised at the time. And I reckon that will be something that they will wrestle with in periods going forward. Premierships are very, very hard to win. And they're notoriously very, very hard to win when you are an interstate team from a traditional football state, because you don't get the leg ups that the Northern States club do. And I'm quite supportive of the Northern States clubs getting those leg ups, to be quite frank. But West Coast, Adelaide, Fremantle and Port Adelaide don't get any of those leg ups. And I don't think it's lost on me that in the last, 17 years, all of those 4 teams have only won 1 premiership between them.
The Australian cricket team lacks ticker. Fair or farce?
I think this is true, Wallace. I think this is fair. I'm not uncomfortable with claiming ownership of the line that they lacked a bit of ticker. I really felt like that second innings in the World Test Championship final was a team that didn't really bleed for the cause. They should have been 3, 4, 5 out at the end of the day on day 2, and they just conspired to lose 8 wickets in a manner that I thought demonstrated, a lack of ticker. I think that's probably the best way to put it. We discussed last week about the fact that they are struggling with their batting order. Their top 3 is being put together, cobbled on the run, and then you've got 4, 5 and 6 that are all very, very good players. Smith, Head, and Bo Webster, who's come in and looked really, really effective. But I just felt as well that it needed someone, maybe it was Travis Head, maybe it was Bo Webster, maybe it was Alex Carey, who had to just find a way of getting that out to the end of the day on day 2 so that they could cash in on day 3 when the conditions were going to improve, as they did remarkably. So, I do think that there is, you know what I feel like? I feel like the Australian cricket team is the best team in the world in a pretty ordinary field at the moment. And I reckon it's a good cricket team that just happens to be number 1 because all the rest are pretty average.
The BBL draft is a farce. Fair or farce?
So the BBL draft is a farce. That is farce. I think it is fair thing to be working towards. The problem with the BBL draft is it's only for international players, and so therefore you're only picking up 1, maybe 2 players because you have capacity. You've got 3 that you can play at any one time. One of them can be retained and the other one you can, and another one you can actually, even though you haven't retained them on your list on a multi-year deal, you can overrule who's taken them as a pick and keep them for yourself. So, for example, Adelaide in the BBL has kept Jamie Overton, mate of ours, a friend of the show, as you know, Wallace, and they could, if Rashid Khan nominated for this year, and let's say the Sydney Thunder selected him, we could claim Rashid Khan because he's been previously our player. So we might only end up making 1 actual pick when the draft is on, which is tonight. That's why it's probably relevant that we're talking about it. But I would love to see that's your entry point into the BBL or the WBBL. that you don't automatically go and play for your local team until you become a big enough name that then you're worth enough money that maybe you're going to be traded or something like that. I want to see everyone funneled in through the draft and make that a little bit more fair. You know what it would help? It would help the number 2 ranked teams in the bigger states. So Melbourne Renegades probably is the best example of a team that has historically struggled behind the Melbourne Stars, even though the Melbourne Stars haven't been that great either. But they sort of have to spread their talent from that state amongst 2 teams, whereas Western Australia, South Australia, Queensland, Tasmania doesn't have to do that with their BBL franchises. So yeah, that's what the draft needs. It needs a bit more of a holistic approach to it, that you might have 5 or 6 picks because you're actually wanting to bring in international players alongside the generation of youngsters. So I like the BBL draft, but it's got a long way to go to actually have some serious gravitas in the Australian sporting market.
The Adelaide 36ers must win a title with this roster. Fair or farce?
Absolutely fair, Wallace. I have not seen a better lineup in the history of the NBL. Zylan Cheatham has been added to the roster. He's the final player to come onto Adelaide's roster. He's a former NBA player, has had a lot of success with the New Zealand Breakers. So I just want to put this first 5, probably the starting 5 for the Adelaide 36ers round 1 next year, be Bryce Cotton, Montrezl Harrell, Zylan Cheatham, Isaac Humphries, and DJ Vasiljevic. I mean, that is the best starting 5 that we have probably ever seen in an NBL court. And it's time for the Adelaide 36ers. They've been notoriously underperforming, and they've been notorious with the way they've just blown opportunities and even blown cash up against the wall, Wallace. Grant Kelly's been the owner since 2017. I've always said this. I admire him for the fact that he has put his hand up and he's put his hard-earned money out of his pocket and into this team. But, geez, frittered some away, you would have to argue. Right now, this is the greatest opportunity the Adelaide 36ers have to add to their 4 titles. It's long, long overdue. And this is the group. And if they can't do it with this group, then I would just be throwing my hands in the air and saying, we will never get it done. It's going to be a great challenge for Mike Wells to bring 5 big egos together and have them working as a team. We don't really, it does look a little bit awkward. And I'm no expert on basketball, but it does look a little bit like we've got a couple of guys who are all going to fill the same position, and maybe we're missing a point guard specifically. But hey, look, they're going to be great fun to watch. They're going to be very entertaining if they can keep it together. They should be very, very successful. But wouldn't it be a great shame to bring all of this superstar talent together and they don't gel and we go on and have another fairly average year? I can't rule that out either. Wallace, how about we get into You're the GM, which is a new little segment that we've brought in each week, and that's where we lean into your experience of managing sporting clubs, club boards and sporting association boards. And I like to throw a scenario at you every week that's probably related to what's going on in the current sporting environment and just see how you would play it out if you were the GM of this particular sporting organisation. I want to ask you about the situation that surrounds the Port Adelaide Football Club at the moment. And I don't want you to speak necessarily specifically about this, but just how you would deal with the situation if you were confronted with something similar. So Port Adelaide at the moment has a board member. That board member is Warren Treadray, who clearly has some significant issues that he is dealing with outside of the specifics of the football club. And I don't think anyone can argue that that is having an adverse effect on the perception of the football club by the greater general public. Now, that might be of importance to you. That might be not. And I think all of the public commentary from the Port Adelaide Football Club, as it's nothing to do with us, it's a private matter for Warren Treadray. But I would argue, Wallace, that there is some contemplation to be had for the Port Adelaide Football Club around this. And if you were in a similar situation, don't put yourself specifically in the David Koch, Warren Treadray situation, but if you were in a similar situation where you had a board member that didn't necessarily gel dynamically or culturally with the rest of the board, how would you manage that issue?
From a board's point of view, I think they need to consider 3 areas. One is reputational damage, potential board disharmony, and to what extent does the board's behaviour and what they're doing outside the boardroom put into question their ability to be an effective board member. And I think if they stick to those core pieces, then they can focus in exactly on what's required for the actual organisation itself. So, if the action outside is positive, somebody gets an award, excellent, let's celebrate, positive for the club. If the action may be seen to bringing reputational damage to the club, it then becomes a big concern. And if it's the latter, it is likely to be a big distraction. So, the board's obviously guided by their constitution and bylaws. They may want to take legal advice if there's no precedent that they've experienced in this. And what they need to do as a board is they need to form a view as to what their future looks like. And it may be with or without that certain board member. So what actions are they likely going to do? I think they need to chat with the board and understand exactly where the board are at. Obviously, it'd be great to actually chat with that board member to understand where their head is at and to assess it from that point of view, and also to undertake a risk assessment. If the board member stays or goes, considering will it impact on the board culture that you spoke about and the effectiveness of the board, any ongoing reputational damage that, it might be sponsorship, commercial impact as well. And these are not easy processes, and each situation, is different.
It's going to be an interesting situation for Port Adelaide to deal with. So I just need to preface this by saying I've dealt with Warren Tredrea before. I like him as a guy, and I'm not particularly affronted by his political views. Have your political views, that's all well and good from my perspective, but I do feel like Warren's political views and the pursuit of inclusivity that Port Adelaide actively engenders is something that is going to clash at some point. And I wonder whether all of those things you discuss are going to be actively what David Koch and by extension his board are going through right now and just managing those sorts of issues. Because I do feel like while Warren Tredrea is on that board, it just represents division in the club, and I just don't know how long you can manage that. He obviously has some great ideas around football. He's very, very intelligent in that space. But I also feel like his political views just do not align whatsoever with the way the club has positioned itself. And that does jar from my perspective. Let's wrap it up with some power rankings. At number 10, Wallace, Port Adelaide have made their first appearance in Hooky's power rankings after that really solid win over the Melbourne Football Club. At number 9, the Adelaide Thunderbirds are back in the winner's circle. They got over the Firebirds. They're bottom place, the Queensland Firebirds. So I don't think it was the win or the resurgence that we're quite hoping for. They've got to play the West Coast Fever in Perth this weekend, and I suspect that will be the end of it. But for now, they come back in at number 9, and who knows what they can do from there. At number 8, I've got the Oakdale Netball Club. They are sitting top of the Netball SA Premier League competition. They're a game clear. Right now, they are the number 1 netball club going around. Would you believe it? Next Friday night, they meet Contacts, which is going to be a massive game. Now, Contacts and Matrix both get some reinforcements back from the Super Reserves competition, so they'll have some players back. And I do think that by the end of it, that Matrix probably are best placed to win from here. But right now, I've got Oakdale, number 8, my number 1 netball club in South Australia. At number 7, the West Adelaide women's soccer team. They had a week off last weekend, so they remain 8 points clear at the top of the Women's National Premier League ladder. At number 6, the Adelaide Hockey Club women's team. They won 1-0 over Forestville at Unley. I just want to put a little asterisk alongside that. Forestville could become a really resurgent hockey club playing out of their new digs at Unley High School, so that's going to be one to watch. I mean, traditionally, Adelaide would have absolutely dusted Forestville, so the fact that they only got past them 1-0 at their new home ground, I think that's going to be worth watching. At number 5, Central District Lions, the NBL 1 Central. The men's team, they're level with Forestville at 11-1. They had 2 wins on the weekend. They had the doubleheader. They beat Sturt, who are in 7th, and they beat South, who are in 3rd. So that was a massive win to beat South Adelaide in 3rd at Mitchell Park, the first time they've ever beaten South at their new home court. The Lions and the Eagles, so Forestville are the Eagles. The Lions and the Eagles will play on July 6 at Starplex out at Elizabeth. That will be buy your popcorn, get out there and watch it. I'm actually thinking of trying to get out there and watch that because that will be an amazing game in 2 or 3 weeks' time. At number 4, the Seacliff Hockey Club, the men's team. They beat Adelaide University, who are one of the strugglers of the competition, but they absolutely dusted them 8-0. So they are careering towards another premiership. Number 3, Sturt in the SANFL. They had the week off, but they hold their place up towards the top. They're undefeated in the SANFL. At number 2, I've got the Crows, who drop a spot after losing to Hawthorn in that tough 3-point loss out there at Launceston. And new number 1, Wallace, it's Metro Stars Soccer Club. They defeated Adelaide Croatia Raiders 4-1. So they go to 12 wins from 14 matches. They've got a massive match against Beograd on Saturday. Just a special mention to Adelaide Croatia Raiders. They sacked their coach, Vladko Blazeka, on Tuesday. The same afternoon, they appointed Phil Scardino. The next night, they were playing in the Australia Cup knockout competition and played their biggest rival, Beograd, ironically enough. I mean, if you know anything about the European history, you would understand that one team being Croatia and another team being Beograd, that they're going to have a pretty historic rivalry. Well, anyway, having sacked coach and replaced him just the day before this game, Adelaide Croatia Raiders have won 1-0 and got through to the final round of 32. So a bit of soccer news for you there. But yes, Metro Stars, my new number 1 on Hooky's power rankings.
Brilliant. Thanks, Hooky. Now, just to catch up on your running, where are things at? How's the body?
Yeah, still struggling, to be honest. I'm doing some strengthening exercises on the hamstring. I'm dealing with the fact that I do have a bit of pain with it. I'm seeing my man, Scott Smith, South Australia's number 1 physio, catching up with him at 9 o'clock tomorrow, mate. So I'm hoping that I can see him at 9, and I've actually got 24 kilometres to run tomorrow afternoon. So I suspect it won't be as fast as what I want, but I am planning on completing the kilometres. Yes, it has been a frustrating 3 weeks with just this niggling little hamstring that I'm not over yet, I have to concede.
Awesome, Hooky.
Good on you, mate.
Look forward to catching up next week.
Will do. If you're enjoying this podcast, I'd encourage you to take a listen to Beyond the Club. It's a project I've been working on with Flinders University. Now I co-host it with Professor Sam Elliott, and we break down all the latest research on how to maximise the experience of junior and club athletes. There's a range of resources, special guests, and cutting-edge info on how you can make your club a safer, happier place for your kids and their club mates. Beyond the Club, wherever you get your podcasts.